He has been involved in developing the global solution delivery of Ford in so many different countries. The US, the UK, Germany, Australia, South Africa, China, India. Currently settled in Germany, working as Regional Chief Information Officer for Europe, the Middle East and Africa of Ford Motor Corporation. Welcome on stage, Roopak Verma!
Okay, good morning. It's a really exciting time to be working for a car company. It really is. And the way the car companies, the automotive manufacturers have started using technology, it's fantastic to be in an IT organization for Ford, and not just Ford, for any big car company. For me, it's even more exciting that you look at some of the big technology companies, and they are also trying to get into the automotive business if they can. So it's a really disruptive time and very interesting time. If you happen to be in IT and technology, I think it's really exciting. Okay, so what I will do today is, okay, here you go. You heard from Microsoft, from SAP, from F-Secure, a lot of stuff about how great the technology is and how it's getting more and more interesting. I think in Ford, my challenge has always been, being the regional CIO, how do you take all this exciting stuff and make it work for the business? Because end of the day, yeah, it's great stuff, but you got to get the business value out of it. So we started looking at all the trend data, what's happening in big data, the connected car, autonomous vehicles coming few years from now, and they are coming, whether you like it or not, and how do we react to all that as Ford Motor Company? We are a big global company. We sell almost more than, 6 million cars a year and growing. And you have to be ready, because if you're not, this business is getting very, very disruptive. So if you just have a look at the environment, I'm not going to go into the details of it because you guys have been around here a day and a half already. Big data, so much discussion about big data, how there's so much data that's being generated. And it's not just data, how do you make use of it for your business is the key. The prolonged economic uncertainty, different regions in the world are at different pace. So sometime, the North America may be doing better, the Europe is doing better, or what's happening in Asia Pacific. Everybody is in a different situation. And as a global business, you have to really account for all that. Accelerating globalization, we're already a global company, but if your company is not, every company is trying to be a global company. And then a lot of disruptive technology that's coming. Big data is one example. The security concern you heard already in the morning. So many concern about the data privacy, especially here in Europe, that you have to worry about. How do you look at this environment and make sense of it for your business? Sorry about that. I keep pressing the wrong button. Here you go. So just have another look at the environment. On the left of the slide, you see that just gives you an idea of how much data is being generated today. It's in petabytes, right? And I'm not even going to go into the examples of it, but everything that everybody's using nowadays is generating data and leaving a trail. Whether you like it or not, it's a trail that's big, and a lot of companies are trying to leverage it. Look at the right, a lot of discussion on Internet of Things. I'm just looking at the car example in this page. Every vehicle now that's going to be connected, and by the way, I'll tell you, end of next year, by law, most of the vehicles in Europe and most of the countries will have modem built in, and they will have a connectivity, and they will be generating tons and tons of data. In fact, every car has a potential, if you look at it, anywhere from 75 megabytes to 25 gigabytes of data per hour can be generated based on what kind of data are you looking at. It's tons and tons of data. Of course, not all that data is going to be useful for what you want to do in your business, but the point is, if you take all these cars and see how much data is going to be generated a year from now, it's unbelievable. Big data doesn't even start to describe how much data is being generated. And on average, just to give you an idea, all over the world, anywhere 80 to 90 million cars are sold every year. That's the new cars I'm talking about. And they will be all coming in with the built-in modem. So what do you do with it? I won't spend much time on it. The idea of the slide is it is real. So people talk about big data, what's happening, is it hype, how real it is, when is it going to be hit? Guess what? It's here today. Now, another thing when we started the journey in Ford was the expectation from this data and what you do with it is changing very, very rapidly. Not today, it's been changing it for many years. So it all started with, something happens, you have your OLTP systems, you go do some analysis and you find out what happened, hindsight, right? It evolved to OLAP many, many years ago. You go do some analysis and you have a really insight into the data. Guess what? That's not the expectation today. The expectation today is to have the foresight, and you already heard from few presentations already. The whole predictive analysis, you take all this data and you try to figure out what's going to happen next is the idea. That's what the business wants from IT. Don't tell me what happened. That was very yesterday. Tell me what's going to happen, and that's where the real value for the business comes in, because then the business can react real time. So when we started this journey in Ford on how are we going to transform the business based on connectivity, based on the big data, I think it's always a good idea to look at what kind of challenges are you getting into. Look at Gartner. They said through 2017, 60% of the big data projects will fail. How many of you got big data projects going in your company today? Just raise your hand if you have one. Quite a few. So be careful how you start and what problem you're trying to solve, because look at this number. Another thing they observed is there's so much hype. You want to go and want to get the data from outside. You have the data on the social media, Facebook, Twitter. Their point was first try to figure out how you're going to use the data that you have, and then integrate it with the data that's from the outside and make the real sense out of it. We so easily fall into the trap that we look at all this exciting stuff happening and try to use it for the business. So if you don't have your data organized, it's going to be very, very difficult to use external data. And another thing, I think it was mentioned earlier, there's a lot of companies that start the big data project for the sake of big data project. Have a very clear understanding of what business problem are you trying to solve, and then apply the technology. By the way, that's not new. That's always been true, and it's even more true today. Another thing we looked at, what's your organization readiness to do a big data project and get the real business value out of it? And if you look at this, not many organizations are actually ready for it. And there are many, many reasons for it. There are cultural reasons for it, there are technical reasons for it, there are legacy reasons for it. I'll give you an example of my company, Ford Motor Company. We've been around for more than 100 years. Our IT department has been around for 50 plus years. You have brand new systems with absolutely cutting edge technology. You have system that we wrote 30 years ago and that is still running. How do you integrate those? Because both of them are generating tons and tons of data. So what's our organization readiness to use all this exciting technology and get the business value out of it? Really important question for you to answer. Another thing we looked at when we got into this journey, who is best in class? And I just picked two examples, by the way. There might be companies who are doing better, or you might find an example which is more relevant to your business. There are two different kind of data analytics business intelligence. One can be evidence-based, another one can be very customer-centric. And I just picked two examples which I think are doing best in class based on those models. Look at the evidence-based decisioning. What that really means is real-time decisioning based on the data and evidence that you're gathering today. Capital One does a great job. I mean, that's the whole idea of being a credit card company and being a bank. If I use my Capital One card today, real time, with 90% probability, they can figure out if there's a fraud that's going to happen based on this transaction today. They have milliseconds to figure that out. They don't have seconds, minutes, and hours to figure it out. And if they do, many times they'll block the transaction or ask you to call before they will let it go. How do they know it? Because they have built this excellent systems based on their customer history, their profile, how do they travel, what their spending patterns are. The real time they can figure out what's the probability that it's you who is using a credit card. Really good systems for evidence-based decisioning. Everybody knows about Amazon. What they have done, which is all around being customer-centric. Sometimes, I mean, it's not even funny. They may know more about your buying habits than you do. You may not like it, but that's true. I mean, they had a project, literally, which they were testing in US and now in Europe, where they could ship the products to a specific geographical location before receiving the orders. Because they have done such excellent, sophisticated analysis, they can, with 95%, 99.8% probability, can predict what products are going to be ordered from which region of the world 2 days from now. So sometime you order something from Amazon, it's going to show up tomorrow because they shipped it yesterday. Isn't that scary? But that's how really you can think about using technology in really innovative, creative ways for your business. End of the day, that's what matters. So we looked at and said, what do we want to do for Ford? So look at the Ford model, how quickly it's been changing last few years. It's really disruptive business to be in right now in automotive business, because as I said, every big technology company wants to be in automotive business because that's where the people are. And when you're driving your car, guess what? If you're like me, I drive every day morning from Bonn to Cologne to go to my office. It may take anywhere from 40 minutes to 1 hour based on traffic. I'm a captive audience most of the time. I mean, what a better opportunity than that to make use of it. And that's where the world is going to go. So from being an industrial company, being a technology company, we will have to. If we don't, there's no guarantee we'll be in the business 100 years from now like we have been 100 years in the past. Multinational operations to one seamless global operations. Another very, very interesting point, being a company that designs, builds the car and sells the car to a company that does all that, plus we have to be in the smart mobility services. Because now that you have connected cars, car sharing has become really, really popular, right? Are we going to continue to be just in the business of making and selling cars or servicing cars? Probably not. 5, 10 years from now, when autonomous cars becomes real, and by the way, I'll tell you today, from a technology perspective, they are very close to being real. The challenges are going to be social, legal, political on getting them on the road, not technical few years from now. So when does that happen, you have to be a smart mobility company. Being in the auto industry to a mobility services industry, huge shift. Focus solely on the driver to on a connected experience, because now people are connected 24/7, including when you are in your car. So how do you really transform your company in this new business model? So literally being in auto industry is the most disruptive time for us right now. So if you look at the changing business environment, and this really illustrates what's happening within Ford Motor Company. And by the way, it's true for any big auto company, not just for Ford. So if you look at what does the connectivity bring to our business. So as I told you, starting next year from now, by law, almost, most of the country in Europe will have built-in modem. It all started with the e-call functionality. That means if your car breaks down, if it's in an accident or something, car can automatically call authorities to inform them there's an accident, so help can come, because you may or may not be in a situation to call. So every car by end of next year will have that built-in functionality. So we call it emergency e-call. That's how it started. That means you have to have connectivity in your car, built-in modem. But once you have that connectivity and you put all that cost in your car to have that connectivity and built-in modem, you absolutely want to do more for your customers. You just don't want to stop at the e-call. How do you do that? So that's where the whole connected vehicle concept comes up. And what do you do with the cars that are already on the market and don't have a built-in modem? So really, really interesting business model and a lot of innovation happening in that space. Another interesting thing is connected consumers. So you got your cars connected, well, that's great. But there's a huge expectation from a consumer perspective because we are living in a connected world right now. I mean, it's funny. My son was giving a TED talk a couple of days ago in the school, and he's just turned 16. And the topic of his discussion was the impact of social media and this connectivity is having on the teenagers. And he had a real example. He said, you know, when I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is I look at my smartphone. Okay? Then I'm having a breakfast, and I'm actually thinking about my smartphone. Now when I take a bus to go to the school, I'm really worried about when the signal is going to drop and I'll be disconnected from my smartphone. I mean, that's really what's happening to these 16 years old. They just live in this connected world. So guess what? When they get into the car, that's what their expectation is. It's not like, okay, now I'm going to be in the car for 45 minutes and I'm not connected to the world. They want the Facebook, their Twitter integrated with the car, and guess what? What we worry about is the safety and security of the driver. You don't want somebody who's driving, and he will be in a year from now, to be distracted with all this stuff. So what can you do for them so they can still be connected but be in a very safe environment where they're not being distracted with all this stuff? As a company, being in IT, I really worry about the connected employees because our employees' expectations are changing too. It's not what used to be 10 years ago. Nowadays, some people want to, and some people actually hate that they're connected. Even after they're out of work, they're connected with their email. Some people love it because they think it gives them flexibility, and many people just hate it because it kind of starts encroaching on your privacy. But the idea is connectivity is there, technology is there, you have to find a good way to really use it. So 3 challenges coming together for us. Connected vehicles, connected consumers, connected employees, all this data that is being generated, how do you take all that into account? Your legacy systems that were written 30 years ago, and really use all this stuff for the business. And that's the transformation journey that we have been in Ford. One very big thing, any big data project that you start, really spend some time on what does the success is going to look like for you. Because it's critical. It's such a new technology. There's so many gray areas. The expectation from your business users, because your CEO happened to read this magazine on the flight, might be completely different than what you can deliver. So spend some time, get the business ownership, define what the success is going to look like. In case of Ford, for us, the success was if we can get one consistent global view of our data, that'll be fantastic. I'll tell you, when we started a customer project because we wanted to get the single view of our customer, we realized we had 36 different systems in 25 different countries who had the customer data in them. How do you provide a single customer view globally? So what's our plan? We sat down with the business folks and said, all right, there's a huge opportunity from technology perspective. Let's sit down and agree on what are we going to do and how is it going to add business value. So there's a pressure on the core business, right? There's a lot of pressure on us to evolve because the technology is evolving. How do we really leverage and agree on the prioritization? Because you can do 100 different things, but you could probably do 5 or 10 things really well in the next couple of years. And that's not my decision being in IT and being a regional CIO. That's the decision my chief marketing officer is going to make. That's the decision my VP of manufacturing is going to make, right? So it's really important to sit down and agree on what your plan is going to be. So I just took one example of marketing because I happen to be spending a lot of time with my chief marketing officer lately because the whole marketing paradigm has been shifting, not in just auto industry, everywhere. Most of our fixed marketing budget that used to go to advertisements on TV and newspaper ads is starting to shift on the social media more and more. And we know we're going to continue to see that shift. So it's really important to really how this paradigm, marketing paradigm is changing. So look at, I just put this, based on our customer interactions, the moment they're doing a research on the website that they want to buy a car, to the moment they come to the dealer, they make a buying decision. And by the way, that's where the relationship starts. It doesn't end there, because now you won't have this tenuous relationship with your customer because you want them to come back to Ford for your servicing. So having a consistent view of the customer, building a story that really provides value to them is something we agreed we needed to do. And that's one example. We said, there are 15 different ways we interact with the customers. Let's become consistent on how we do it. So in conclusion, couple of things that are going to be critical. And by the way, we started a few years ago, and we think it's going to take us a few more years to really start generating that business value, which we think all this connectivity, all this big data, real-time analytics is going to bring to Ford Motor Company. So couple of key points that I want to leave you with. Make sure your organization is ready for these kind of projects. Make sure that you're able to leverage your existing data, get value out of it before you start running and start chasing and buying external data. Take an iterative approach. Nobody wants to wait another year to get the value from an IT project. Make sure your project may be 2 or 3 years. You are delivering value every 5 to 6 weeks. I mean, really, really important. Align your operating model to enable your organization, so you may have to change few things. Have a clear business ownership, and try to solve a specific business problem. Don't make it very generic, which is my experience. So with that, I will leave you a few thoughts. By the way, the car that you saw at the bottom of the page, I love to put on my slides because that's what I'm driving right now, which is a Ford Mustang convertible. And this is our performance portfolio from Ford. So I'll leave you with that, and we'll be available for question answers later on. Thank you.